Hey, this is Joel Cameron. In this video, I am going to process the overheads. In the previous videos, I processed the kick and the snare, got some clarity and some definition from those, pulled back the frequencies that were sort of standing in the way of revealing the sound that I preferred out of those drums. And now I'm going to process the overheads. I'm skipping the toms for now because toms typically are not a major part of most drum tracks. They're more used for fills, and this track that I've got here is no different. They pretty much just happen at the end of phrases and whatnot. And it's the actual groove that I'm working on at this point. And so the overheads are a big part of that. So I'm going to process them in this one. And this is what we have so far, which is the kick and the snare EQ'd, and then the previous isolation that I did in the earliest videos. So we have some decent definition from the kick and snare. They sound nice. Don't have to go too hyped with them at this point. I'm going to turn up the overhead, and I want you to listen to the relationship or the clarity of the kick and snare as I turn up the overhead, and see if anything changes. Now that's more roomy. You're hearing some room sound. But also, listen to that snare drum and listen for clarity and definition. Versus when I turn that down a little bit. A lot more clarity on that right there with the dry snare or the up close snare. So the overheads are important. I do like the sense of space that they give the kit, even though it's close to the kit. It's not room mics, but it gives it a sense of space, a sense of dimension. But it also has a big part of the backbeat of the snare drum. You can see it on the meter, as well as hear it and feel it. The biggest part, the loudest, strongest part of that is the backbeat, the snare drum itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to control that. So I'm going to put on a compressor. And I'm going to bite some of that off. Like a lot of it off. I wouldn't mind having some of it on. Yeah, somewhere around there. I'm hearing... I want the release not to be so fast that it reinforces the room sound by turning up the decay so quickly. But I don't want it so slow that you kind of hear it sucking back and forth as it moves around. That feels pretty natural there. It's controlled the snare. See? Now I'm knocking 12 dB off of that, and that's a bit more. I mean, I don't need that much, so I'm going to raise the threshold here so it doesn't compress as much. 6 dB is pretty good. I can always come back and tweak it later, and generally I always massage these things throughout the process of mixing. So let's go back and drop that in, see what it sounds like. Now, it's knocked 6 dB off the loudest sections of this, and I haven't increased the gain control yet. So what this means is that I actually have bought myself about 6 dB of room on this fader, which is at -12. So for that snare to be equally as loud, I can bring it up to there. And so the snare relationship is the same between the two, but now the overheads are pretty loud. I don't need that much. But I did that just to show you kind of what happens. Now that feels good there. I'm getting some clarity, I'm getting some definition, the transients, the snappiness is all there. Good body. That snare drum will have a little bit more body once I put some delay and or reverb on it. So it'll have a little more of a tonal characteristic. Right now it's more snapping at you. And I haven't compressed it overtly. Okay, so I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put an EQ on the overheads.